Tim was constantly scouring the corridors of the Moon Paradise Hotel as he did every night at dawn. It was hard work, but it was not badly paid as it was a luxury hotel. The bad thing is that everything had to be perfectly clean before 6 in the morning, since the daytime activities of the hotel began at that hour. But Tim did not care. He had a safe job and nobody bothered him, and the latter for him was the most important thing. The only thing that disturbed him was one thing: the elevator on the second floor. Every day without fail, the elevator rose from the ground floor to the second and its door opened, revealing the luxurious interior, as if inviting anyone who was nearby to climb into it. And so he stayed for a while. Tim had already asked the concierge on the ground floor if someone had entered the elevator at that time, but the answer was the same, a no, followed by a strange look. So he stopped asking and he went to clean it, which was his thing. It could be some joking tenant, yes, it could be, or maybe the damn thing was not working properly. One night that Tim was on the second floor taking a short break, while he was looking at a beautiful picture on the wall of a painter he did not know, the elevator opened again. Tim turned and was surprised to see a woman, completely dressed in black with a grim look, was coming out the doors and disappearing down the corridor on the right. Tim, surprised and fascinated at the same time, set the mop on the wall and headed for the elevator, which was at the end of the corridor. When he arrived he looked both sides of the side aisle, but no trace of the woman. But the elevator was still there, wide open. Tim stepped into his ostentatious interior and admired him as he had never done, even it seemed that it was not the same elevator of every day. Walls of red velvet, adorned with golden vines in the form of vines and accompanied by various paintings of personalities he had never seen, decorated the interior of the mysterious elevator. He noticed a small painting, a black and white portrait that caught his attention. In a lower corner of the picture was a name, Madaya. It could not be true, she was extremely similar to the woman who had just emerged from the elevator a few minutes ago. At that moment, the elevator closed. At first Tim stood, waiting for it to open again. He thought someone would have driven the elevator from another floor, and soon it would open, revealing the typical tenant coming from some night party. But the elevator reached the ground floor and continued down, down and down. Tim stood, not knowing what to do. His rational mind told him that perhaps there would be lower floors below, like a basement or some warehouse. It is more likely that an employee would have activated the elevator from below, using the key reserved for restricted floors that only a certain staff could employ. Tim, with a strange knot in his stomach, kept waiting, but the damn thing continued to descend. Tim started sobbing and slammed the elevator door loudly as he shouted endlessly for someone to help him. But it was useless. Tim sat on the floor of the elevator, completely ignoring the luxurious interior that now seemed perverse and cursed, and wept very frightened. After several minutes that seemed like hours, the elevator stopped and its doors opened. Tim, who was crouched on the floor of the elevator with his head down on his knees, looked up and saw what was coming. The dim, long hallway, poorly lit with old yellow fluorescents, did not resemble anything at all to indicate that it was still the hotel. Tim got up and left the elevator and stood a meter away from him, watching the surroundings. The shadowy corridor resembled that of an abandoned factory, for at its sides there were no doors, but bow-shaped entrances. The man went to one of the entrances and looked inside. He could see a wide and vaulted room of similar lighting. He was very frightened when he saw several people wandering about in the gloom, babbling unintelligible words. He turned away from the corner and closed his eyes, but then opened them when he heard someone approaching his position. He retreated fearfully toward the elevator, for he did not know who these grotesque individuals were or wanted, but he froze when he saw, with horror, that there was no elevator. Where once there had been a luxurious elevator, there was now a dark and dirty hollow covered from end to end. He realized, for a moment, that he was dreaming, that he had gone mad, that this could not be happening. He noticed someone looking at him from behind. He turned and saw a bald little man dressed in rags watching him curiously. Tim asked, not caring who he was or what he wanted, what place this was. The strange little man answered that it was the kingdom of Madaya. The frightened man was surprised, looking at the other as if hypnotized. The grotesque little man, seeing that Tim did not understand, replied, "For you, for us and for all the unwary who fall into their domain, hell." The ragged little man told her that Madaya was the original owner of the Moon Paradise Hotel, but was murdered by her husband, inheriting the whole business. Her husband did not know that his wife had made covenants with dark powers, which allowed her to come to this plane instead of being thrown to a lower level hell to be consumed. He told her that Madaya, from time to time, attracted young men here to serve as food for Asplareth, the god of mischief and misery. One of them was her husband, and although he was not very young, his god did not raise many objections, for Asplareth rejoiced with revenge. It was said that this demo gave him great powers and power to remain on this plane, as long as he paid his tribute with young souls. The little man pointed toward the end of the corridor. "Beyond the corridor lies Asplareth, our lord," he said quietly. "He leaves us alone, for we were here before Madaya arrived. We also serve Asplareth, in fact everyone who arrives here serves you." In the back of his mind, Tim kept thinking that this would all be over, that it had to be a nightmare caused by stress or by some dementia his mind might have developed. Suddenly, Tim felt an icy presence behind him. Turning, he found himself face to face with the same woman he had seen coming out of the elevator, the same as the photo. Now, near him, she was a young-looking woman, very beautiful, tall, more than he, and very pale, too. Before Tim asked what this was all about, the ghostly woman grabbed him by the arm with superhuman strength and dragged him through the dark hallway. Tim screeched like an animal on the way to the slaughterhouse, while the cold hand weakened. The last thing Tim saw was the depressing fluorescent lights that illuminated the deep corridor, before serving dark purposes that transcended beyond what an inferior creature like him could come to understand.